So I was reading Deuteronomy the other day, and I read across something that I don't know how I never took that to heart. That was there. I never took that as a commandment, but the commandment was there, and I don't see how it's not a New Testament principle just because it's in the Old Testament. But I don't remember which one I read, but there's actually two passages that say the same similar thing. I would encourage you to look them up. Deuteronomy 4:2, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, and Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 32. And God says, essentially, whatever I command you to observe, whatever I tell you to do, don't add thereto, don't add to that, and don't diminish from it. And I always knew, don't diminish from it, but I just never understood the don't add to part. Because there was a time in my life, I think I was adding commandments just because it's better to be safe than sorry type thing, you know? It's not clear, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so I'm going to add some commandment. And it's better to be safe than sorry is not a commandment, that we should make commandments based on that reasoning. If you don't know, if God didn't say anything, should we make a commandment to abstain from something He didn't say nothing about? So, He said don't add to it, right? Don't add to my commandment. I command you something, do that, do it, what I command you. Don't diminish from it, so don't fail to do it. And don't add to it. Don't give some other command that I didn't give you. And I missed that don't add part, I think, for a long part of my life, and I did that, I think. And okay, I just want to be able to express my thoughts, even though I know my thoughts are contrary to Christianity. But I don't see that, I can't see that they're actually contrary to the scripture. But they are contrary to Christendom today. Has it always been? I don't know. One of the things is tobacco a damnable sin that's going to send people to hell? I used to pretty much damn people to hell because I said, your body's the temple. You're not supposed to defile God's temple. And smoking cigarettes is defiling God's temple. And I commanded people, stop smoking cigarettes, basically, or you're going to go to hell for destroying God's temple. But God never commanded, don't use tobacco. And oddly, He commanded, essentially, He told the Jews in the Old Testament, when you get to the land that I'm going to give you, whatsoever your soul lusteth after, you can buy it. If you lust after strong drink, buy it. Whatever your soul lust is for, when you get to the land and you have money, you can buy it. Except for the things contrary to my commands. Don't use my money to buy a person that's been man-stealing, right? You don't want to buy a slave that's been from man-stealing. But He told him essentially, you can drink alcohol, straight up. You know how bad alcohol is? How easy it is to have too much and just cross that line and do something stupid and be stupid? It's a fine line you gotta toe to not fall into one too many. And now I regret that I had one too many, and I wake up with a headache in the morning. And I kind of said some stuff I don't think I would have said when I was sober, I lost some of, usually I keep things private. I kind of said too much. And so, that you would allow someone to drink alcohol, but then say, oh, but tobacco, that one, you know, like alcohol, obviously, even they say, especially alcohol today, because a lot of it's sprayed with chemicals to keep the fruit, and there's websites that will tell you, like even one glass of wine, some say it's healthy, some say, no, not really, and now it's been found, one glass a day. It's hard to know, right? But God never forbid tobacco. And Paul said, there is nothing unclean in and of itself. But if any man esteems anything to be unclean, for him it is unclean. So since I thought tobacco was unclean, for me it was. And it was actually a sin for me to do it. But I didn't have the right to condemn people who didn't. For them it wasn't unclean, because nothing's unclean in and of itself. And if you're using tobacco, and there are videos today all over X, because I'm over there on X, formerly known as Twitter. There's videos on X I'm seeing pop up all the time of the insane health benefits of nicotine. There's all kinds of cures and all kinds of good things that you can get from nicotine. And it helps you fight off viruses and all kinds of good stuff. It's lots of studies to show good things from nicotine. And it's not even the nicotine that's necessarily cancer causing. I think smoking causes a lot of carcinogens. Also, back when they were doing the studies on how cancer was causing, especially smoking was causing so much cancer, they were also spraying the crops with all kinds of chemicals. So was it even really the tobacco leaf that God made, you know? Or was it the fact it was being chemically sprayed to keep bugs off of it so they get the most money out of their crop? You know? Or the other stuff they do to it. But if you look at cancer rates of smoking versus like other forms of nicotine, cigarettes are the worst. But anyways, people get liver cancer too and other things from drinking. So what I'm trying to get to is, if nothing is unclean in and of itself, so tobacco in and of itself is not unclean. If you do it because the doctor told you it's a cure and it can help you fight off viruses, and there are studies that show there's lots of good things nicotine can do. It can help with Parkinson's and other stuff. There's a huge list. Go look it up for yourself. I'm sure you'll find it. I came across it all the time on X. It just pops up on my feed. If you do it because you think there's a health benefit, like vitamin C, nicotine, vitamin N, vitamin D, you know, it's something that plants have that is good for your health. Well, I don't know, there's other things that aren't vitamins that are in food that are good for you, right? Like, they have names. There's other things. I'm sure someone can think of something. It's not a vitamin, but there's a word for it. It's found in nature, and if you eat it, it has health benefits. It lowers the risk of things. There's statistics that show, you know. And if tobacco's not unclean in and of itself, and God never even commanded it against it, can a thing that is not unclean defile a holy temple? If it's not unclean, it can't defile you. If your motives are pure, and you don't see it as wrong, and your conscience doesn't convict you, and people back in the 1500s, 1600s, they had no idea it was wrong. Why would they think it was defiling your temple if God didn't command against it, and they didn't know it was bad for your health? You know what I'm saying? We're going to condemn all the people of the past for using tobacco before science told us it was so bad? But do we know it wasn't because they sprayed the crops? I mean, do we know it was even really just the tobacco? I don't know that, you know. They change all the time what's good and bad for you anyways. But if nothing's unclean in and of itself, tobacco's not unclean in and of itself. But if you do it as an unclean thing, oh, this thing's wrong and I want to do something naughty, my mom and dad told me not to do, oh, that is wrong. Now you're doing it as an unclean thing, I would say. Because to you, that thing's wrong. Well, it would be wrong if mom and dad told you not to do it. But in and of itself, it's not. And so I can't condemn all people in all cases for using a thing God never... I was adding to God's law, I think, now. And I was condemning people I probably shouldn't have been condemning. I was convicted of myself. I shouldn't play video games. It's a waste of time. Jesus said, let the dead bury their dead, but go preach the gospel. And I was convicted. I shouldn't waste my time on video games. But I was condemning everybody for playing video games. Because I feel it's wrong. Therefore, you're wrong if you do it. But honestly, like, when I look back as a kid and having video games, that is a good memory I have. And I wish all the kids of the world could play video games and have a good time, right? Like sports, games, playing board games, same thing as a video game. Game is a game. As long as it's not teaching you evil stuff or doing, corrupting you somehow. But whether it's on a video or it's on a board, it's a game. It's not unclean in and of itself. I wish to God all men could sit around and play video games all day. If everyone was saved and we didn't have like a great priority, but kids and even adults who haven't had the conviction and burden of feeling convicted about playing video games, for them it's not unclean to them because they're not doing it thinking it's wrong, knowing it's wrong. If any man esteems anything to be unclean, wrong, evil, if any man esteems anything to be unclean, for him it is. He didn't say for the man who doesn't, right? I was adding to God's commandments. Video games, sports, condemning people, going to watch the NFL. I was condemning people for that. But they've never come to that light so that thing became unclean for them, and God never even commanded to abstain from it. And it isn't even light. It could just be my personal conviction, and I'm actually weak as that context of that passage. If any man esteems anything to be unclean, for him it is unclean. Maybe I'm just weak. So, God never commanded, you can't watch someone play volleyball. You can't watch someone play football. He never commanded that. But I thought what they were doing was a waste of time in vain. So I condemned them. And I'm going to go into something else. But I feel like this one needs some more biblical justification than what I've said so far. So I'll have to go to some verses. Jesus said, if you ask God for bread, will he give you a serpent? No, he won't. Right? If you ask your father for bread, is he going to give you a serpent? No. So, keep that in your mind. In the book of Kings, it says about David that he did all that was right in the sight of the Lord. Go look that verse up. Look up this phrase, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. Because it might not say that verbatim, but it says that in gist. He walked perfect before the Lord in all his ways, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. His heart was perfect before the Lord, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. He did all that was right in the sight of the Lord, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. Okay. Jesus said, you can look that verse up to get it perfectly, but that's the gist of what it says. Jesus said about divorce and remarriage, because of the hardness of your hearts, God allowed you to divorce. But I say, what God has brought together, don't let man tear asunder. That was his conclusion. Some of you might know where I'm going with this. What God has brought together, let not man tear asunder. That was the conclusion of the matter. When he brought up, God made them male and female, and he made them one flesh, and therefore, what God has brought together, tear not thou asunder. And that was the command that Jesus gave. Now back to David. God said to David, who was walking perfectly up until the time of Uriah the Hittite, So this verse I'm about to quote you was before Uriah the Hittite, right? You'll know when I tell you the verse. And I'm like, right? Yes, it is. Okay. The verse I'm going to quote to you happened before the incident of Uriah the Hittite, during the time that David was walking with a perfect heart. And if he had a perfect heart, God would not give him a serpent. Am I correct? He had a perfect heart. Would God give him a serpent? He was a child of God, wasn't he? Psalms 82:6. Sons of the highest. 82:7, sorry. So, being a son of the highest and having a perfect heart, God would not give him a serpent. And God said, I believe in the book of Samuel, that God gave you David. I gave it to you. God wouldn't give him a serpent, would he? No, he wouldn't. I gave you your master's wives. Wives, plural. I gave you wives. And if that wasn't enough, couldn't I have given you more? Did God give him an evil, unclean thing, having more than one wife? No. It wasn't wrong in the Old Testament. Well, Jesus' argument, because of the hardness of your hearts, David didn't have a hard heart, did he? At that time, no. When God gave him wives, he didn't have a hard heart. So God did not give him wives because of the hardness of his heart. I don't think you could make that argument, because he did all that was right in the sight of the Lord. His heart was perfect before God until that incident with Uriah the Hittite, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. So, having a perfect heart, his heart was not hard. God did not give him a serpent or give him something contrary to his will because of the hardness of it. That because of the hardness of his heart does not apply to this, you see. And the therefore, let not man tear asunder. He didn't, what God brought together. God brought it together, the multiple wives. God did that. I gave you your master's wives. Don't tear those wives asunder. But Jesus said, don't let God bring them together. He never said, don't let God bring them together. He never said that. And I was condemning polygamy and the Muslims polygamy and stuff. But you can't use hardness of your hearts and don't let it tear asunder. Because God, when he made male and female, he made them one flesh. And I know you want to point to nature. See, he made them male and female. Yeah, but you got to follow all of Jesus's points. And I don't want to add to his commandment of, therefore, don't tear asunder, because that was his commandment. Don't tear asunder. Don't add to or diminish from this commandment. Don't tear asunder. That was the commandment. Should I add to that with my own therefores, my own therefore, it is Corbin. Therefore, I'll add another rule. And God said, or excuse me, the New Testament says that, is it bishops, elders, or pastors perhaps, that they should be the husband of one wife. Okay, well they should. We could go there with that one, if that's to be read that way. Some people argue against that, but I see how you read that way, and I see it that. I've always kind of seen it that way, although I've heard arguments to the contrary. But they get into the Greek and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well in the English to me, this says that, and that's where I'm at right now, and I don't mind staying there. Pastors should be it makes sense to me though, like they got a lot to take care of if they're taking care of the flock, so they don't need a whole lot of distractions. And Paul said if you get married, it's going to give you trouble in the flesh. You don't need a bunch of trouble in the flesh. But that's a specific commandment, and the commandment doesn't apply if I command bishops to be the husband of one wife. I don't give it to everyone. So what does that mean? Don't add to the commandment and don't take away from it. It doesn't prove you have a hard heart, and it's not tearing asunder. Don't add to Jesus' commandment. Don't make up your own therefores to come to the conclusion it is Corbin, or this is forbidden, this is allowed. Don't use your own reasoning. Rely not on your own understanding. Obey my commandments. Don't add to it, and don't take away. And not only that, God commanded, like, if your brother dies, you got to marry his wife and give her seed. I mean, did men that already have wives, did Ruth and Did her husband, I can't think of his name. Oh, I don't know why I got my tongue, my brain's held. Boaz, there we go. Did he already have other wives? I mean, the Bible doesn't say, but if he did, would it have been unlawful for him to take the second one when God never told him it was disallowed, and he told him he should raise up seed? He should. He told him what to do. Raise up seed. Raise up seed. Told him to do it. Never said, don't take a second one. Never did say that. Don't add to, don't take away. I need to do it. I need to take this woman. How could you come to another conclusion? That's what I want to know, at least from the Old Testament, but even in the New. Am I going to use my own therefores to add a command to add to or diminish? It is Corbin, diminishing. Adding to, it's forbidden to have more than one wife. I know it is for the elders or for the pastors, because that was specifically addressed to the pastors. They need to be the husband of one wife, which implies, would I want to build a doctrine on that implication? No, but I have all these other things that I've been building this doctrine on, and it all comes together as one doctrine. It's not just I'm taking that implication, but don't add to, don't take away. Don't use your own therefores to come to a conclusion that makes you diminish.